Hello, friends. Glad you can make it. Today we're going to be discussing something that caused me serious psychological damage growing up, but we're going to try to keep things as light as possible. We shall see. I hate standardized tests and the school is lazy and they're ruining people's lives. Those are some pretty bold statements, I know, but I stand by all of them. Let's go back to the year 2008, I believe it was, when I took my first standardized test. Up to that point, I had gotten consistently good grades, and had demonstrated that I was fully capable of proving my intelligence. But then I took my first standardized test, and it was like, BAM! All of a sudden, none of that mattered. In my school district, elementary school standardized testing consisted of taking a yearly 4-hour test every day for about a week. If the test was in the morning, elementary school students had lunch or recess afterwards to allow them to regroup. And if it was in the afternoon, they just, the school day's over and they went home. But you see, the thing is, I never got that. For those of you who don't know, I have ADHD. So being forced to sit there and take a test for 4 hours straight was utterly torturous. Plus, it typically takes me a lot longer to do things since my attention span is really bad. Testing time would be up and I'd only be halfway through. All the other kids got to go to recess or lunch or just go home, but I never did. I had to stay after to finish my test. And just like that, this 4-hour test has transformed into a 5 to 6 hour test. As I already stated, sitting there and trying to force my brain to focus for 4 hours straight was hard enough. 5 to 6 hours? While all my friends were off having fun? That's just plain cruel. I would like to pull a quote from Rick Riordan's The Lightning Thief, since the narrator is an ADHD 12-year-old, so I really relate. My nightmare started out as something I dreamed a million times before. I was being forced to take a standardized test while wearing a straitjacket. All the other kids were going out to recess and the teacher kept saying, "Come on, Percy, you're not stupid, are you? Pick up your pencil." That's how it feels. It's really humiliating. Everyone would finish their tests and look over to see that I was still working. They looked at me like I was stupid. I'm not stupid. And you may be wondering why I didn't just say I was ADHD and get one of those special ADHD-friendly tests versions. Because I didn't know I was ADHD. I was like 8 when I took my first standardized test. Do you think 8-year-old Allison knew what ADHD was? The answer is no, she didn't. The responsibility fell on my teachers to address the problem, and they didn't. My teachers knew I was having these problems, but they didn't do anything about it because I was still scoring fairly well on the tests. I could have done a lot better if I'd been taking versions of the tests that better suited my needs, but I wasn't. And my teachers, they just said, well, she's not failing, so no need to seek out other alternatives. They didn't consider how taking those tests was impacting me. That was really humiliating for me. But who cares about that? Getting me ADHD-friendly versions of those tests would have required filling out paperwork, and who wants to deal with that? I couldn't stand up for myself because I didn't know what was best for me. The adults in my life should have done something about this, but nobody did. I tried to tell people how much I was struggling and how this was impacting me, but nobody cared because, I wasn't failing the tests, so I guess that means it's not a problem. Even worse, they treated me like I was the problem. They made it sound like I just wasn't trying hard enough, or I didn't care enough, or I was just plain doing it wrong. But looking back, I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was doing everything right. I was struggling because of forces beyond my control. I didn't choose to be like this. I tried so hard on those tests. I thought I was the problem because that's what the adults in my life were telling me. It wasn't until high school when SAT time was here, a test that would determine what colleges I would be able to apply to, so, kind of determining the course of my whole life. And the SATs don't offer extended testing time unless you've applied as disabled at the beginning of the year. And since I didn't have that extended testing time, I couldn't finish the test in time. I'd get halfway through it and just fill in a random letter for the rest. Usually B. B's pretty much my go-to. And my parents and teachers were like, whoa, Allison is scoring badly on this really important test. Maybe now we should actually start looking into getting her some treatment. My entire worldview changed when I started going to my doctor to get medication for this. I realized that after years of beating myself up over these issues and believing that they were all my fault, that they weren't actually my fault. That this is just who I am and not a result of not caring. I also realized how much my teachers and the schooling system had failed me. It was like, unless I was failing these tests, my struggles weren't real to them. They didn't acknowledge that this was about so much more than just test scores. This was about my happiness and ability to function as a human. I will forever be bitter over this. Wow, I'm mad. Well, let's end this here before I pop a blood vessel or, I don't know, punch someone. Yeah, I could really go for a good punching. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go punch someone. Later.